Hey guys, this is Bix. We're roadrunner.com. It is late June 2019, and this is a two-part video series on kind of where we stand as far as the actual collapse, the beginning of the collapse. Part one is going to deal with the clues and hints we had about the last collapse, the September of 2008 collapse, and just how close we were to culminating the road Roota, the end game, the destruction of the fiat monetary system. How close we were, the clues that led up to that event, where we are now, the triggers that will surely take down the entire system, and then what clues do we have pointing towards when the next event will be? That is mainly in the second video, the second part. I think I can do these back to back. But the first part, I want to show you that there were clues leading up to it. Besides all the economic clues, yes, we know the system is unsustainable. There's no plans to pay off the debt. There's no plans to get the budget in order. They don't even talk about that anymore. There is no saving a system like ours, a fractional reserve system that is required to create more and more money because money is created as debt. And there's interest on that debt that needs to be paid. So you have to keep creating more and more money. And then you have crashes and rebirths and crashes. And mainly the crashes are orchestrated to grab the real assets and clean up the balance sheet, shall we say, of the criminality, and then go forward again and it crashes again. So we are on the brink of another crash, just like in 2008, except this one will be larger. Now, I want you all to get a scope of how close we were to everything shutting down, including your grocery stores, your power generation, your hospitals, the money system, obviously, the flow of money. Check out what Paul Kanjorski said about and when. The key is when, because people say, oh yeah, it's in September sometime. This is 2008, Kanjorski talking about what happened.
Why did we do that? We did that because the secretary, look, I was there when the secretary and the chairman of the Federal Reserve came those days and talked with members of Congress about what was going on. It was about September 15th. Here's the facts, and we don't even talk about these things. On Thursday at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the Federal Reserve noticed a tremendous drawdown of money market accounts in the United States to the tune of...
Did you see that? So he's saying the head of the Fed and the Treasury came to Congress and said they came on the 15th, but what happened was on at 11 o'clock in the morning on 9/11, 2008.
$550 billion was being drawn out in a matter of an hour. The Treasury opened up its window to help. They pumped $105 billion in the system and quickly realized that they could not stem the tide. We were having an electronic run on the banks.
An electronic run on the banks. Remember that for a discussion we're going to have in part two. This was all computer driven. It's a click of a mouse. I've been saying it for years. A click of a mouse.
They decided to close the operation, close down the money accounts, and announce a guarantee of $250,000 per account so there wouldn't be further panic out there. And that's what actually happened. If they had not done that, their estimation was that by 2 o'clock that afternoon, $5.5 trillion would have been drawn out of the money market system of the United States, would have collapsed the entire economy of the United States.
Did you hear that? So on 9/11, 2008, had they not bailed out everybody, it would have collapsed the economy of the United States.
And within 24 hours, the world economy would have collapsed. Now, we talked at that time about what would happen if that happened. It would have been the end of our economic system and our political system as we know it. And that's why when they made
the end of our economic system, the end of our political system, it is the same excuse they used in 1913 to create the Federal Reserve System because of all the gold they found in the Grand Canyon. The end of the economic system and the political system has been the main excuse at the end of the day for not going to some kind of sound monetary system.
The point, we've got to act and do things quickly. We did. Now, Secretary Paulson said, let's buy out these subprime mortgages. That's what he came to Congress. But he said, give us latitude and large authority to do many things as we decide necessary. And give us $700 billion to do this in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean without a life raft. And we're trying to determine what's the closest shore and whether there's any chance in the world to swim that far. We don't know.
So there, there you go. I mean, in a nutshell, on September 11th, 2008, the entire system was almost destroyed. Your checking account, your savings account, your 401k, your grocery store, your local shops, your nationwide shops, your global shops, you name it, it would have all come to a screeching halt. September 11th, 2008. Now we're talking about what happened in the past at the moment, but these are things you got to remember. And how was it accomplished? A click of a mouse. Electronic run on the banks. Click of a mouse. Now, how is this possible? How is it possible that our system got so massively over leveraged that it can't sustain itself? Derivatives. 2002, Warren Buffett, brilliant guy, and I do think he is working with the good guys. I think he lies a lot about his position on gold and on cryptocurrencies. He is lying. It's not that he doesn't understand it. He is lying. You need to read his father's speech to Congress and read Warren Buffett's biography. Warren Buffett's dad was a congressman, Howard Buffett, screamed at Congress for not going back to a gold standard. Absolute must. And Warren Buffett idolized his father. I'm not making this stuff up at all. This is 100% fact. Warren Buffett knows the value of gold, knows the meaning of gold, knows the value of cryptos, and knows the meaning of cryptos. He is lying when he says what he says because so many people follow his advice. If Warren Buffett said, oh my God, buy gold, trillions will be flowing into gold. Oh my God, buy cryptos, trillions would be flying into cryptos. At some point they will, but not right now. But here's what he wrote in his report in 2002. I'll read the first part and the end. On derivatives. I view derivatives as time bombs, both for the parties that deal in them and the economic system. Basically, these instruments call for money to change hands at some future date, with the amount to be determined by one or more referenced items, such as interest rates, stock prices, or currency values. For example, if you are either long or short an S&P futures contract, you are a party to a simple derivative transaction, with your gain or loss derived from movements in the index. Derivative contracts are of varying duration, running sometimes to 20 or more years, and their value is often tied to several variables. Unless derivative contracts are collateralized or guaranteed, their ultimate value also depends on creditworthiness of the counterparties to them. Think Deutsche Bank. But before a contract is settled, the counterparties record profits and losses, often huge in amount, in their current earnings statements without so much as a penny changing hands. Reported earnings on derivatives are widely overstated. That's because today's earnings are in a significant way based on estimates whose inaccuracy may not be exposed for many years. Remember, he's writing this in 2002, and we saw it. We saw it happen in 2008, the beginnings of a meltdown. The $300 billion bailout of AIG was all about derivatives. Basically, he talks about how shitty derivatives are, how risky they are, long-term capital management, which was a big gold rigger. And let's get to the final sentence, which is the big one. The derivatives genie is now out of the bottle, and these instruments will almost certainly multiply in variety and number until some event makes their toxicity clear. That was 2008. Central banks and governments have so far found no effective way to control or even monitor the risk posed by these contracts. And finally, this sentence. In my view, derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction, carrying dangers that, while latent now, are potentially lethal. absolutely correct. And he wrote this in 2002. We saw it. We were on the brink of everything being destroyed in 2008. I wish they had gone through with it. I wish they had not bailed out the banks. Yes, it would have been chaotic. It's going to get worse and worse every year. They should have fixed this problem back in 1913. It does not make things better. It makes things worse, and it's immoral to put these debts on our children and their children, like our parents did on us. Most of our parents didn't know what was going on, so they didn't have a decision. But we have a decision now. We know about derivatives. We know about the criminality in the banking system. Walk down the street and ask anybody, are you in favor of a bank bailout if the banks crash again? To the man, you'll hear no, no, no. Then you say, would you be willing to lose all your investments by not bailing out the banks? Everything you ever saved for? They would say no. Would you be willing to lose all your debt because the bankers crashed? They would say yes. It is a very complicated subject. But the banker bailout, bankers will go to jail this time. And I don't think it'll get bailed out because they're not going to ask for $700 billion. They're going to ask for $20 trillion, maybe $100 trillion because of what's going on in the derivatives. Let's talk about the derivatives. Deutsche Bank still has $49 trillion in derivatives. Insane. On July 21st, 2011, when the GAO released its audit of the Federal Reserve's secret $16 trillion in bank loans during the financial crisis, a foreign bank ranked number 9 on the list of the largest borrowers. The loans went not just to the largest banks on Wall Street, but to foreign derivative counterparties to the Wall Street banks. The foreign bank that ranked number 9 on the list of the largest borrowers was Germany's Deutsche Bank, which took $354 billion in revolving loans from the Federal Reserve. According to an article in the Financial Times last week, Germany's federal and state governments have spent 70 billion euro on bailing out banks since the financial crisis, according to the estimate by Gerhard Stieg, head of the lobby group Finance Watch. The figure of 70 billion euro is about 79 billion US dollars. Why did the Fed throw 364 billion at one German bank when its country of origin has only reached in its pockets to the tune of 79 billion for all the troubled banks? 2018, the serially troubled bank, Deutsche Bank, which still has a vast derivatives footprint in the U.S. as counterparty to some of the largest banks on Wall Street, trimmed its exposure to derivatives from a notional $48 trillion in euros to 43 trillion in euro or 49 trillion US, according to its 2018 annual report. A derivatives book of 49 trillion notional puts Deutsche Bank in the same league as bank holding companies, US juggernauts JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, and Goldman Sachs, which logged in $48 trillion, $47 trillion, and $42 trillion. These numbers are astronomical and they are all interconnected. Deutsche Bank goes down, so does JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman, so does everybody. Deutsche Bank's feeble 10% reduction in mind-numbing derivatives stands in stark contrast to the reduction in Deutsche Bank's share price last year. On the first day of trading in 2008, Deutsche Bank opened up at $19.27. On the last day of trading this year, December 31st, 2018, Deutsche Bank closed at $8.15, a 58% loss. So we know Deutsche Bank is key. The big thing about Deutsche Bank is in the late 90s, Jerome Powell, our now head of the Fed, pawned off all the derivatives of Bankers Trust into Deutsche Bank. That was the hidden nuclear suitcase, and it still resides at Deutsche Bank. That was always the linchpin to destroy the system. Alan Greenspan, Larry Summers, Robert Rubin all argued for no regulation around derivatives in the late 1990s. CFTC Commissioner Sheila Bair won the Kennedy, Medal of Honor, Medal of Courage, or whatever it is, the Kennedy Award for courage, for standing up to these guys. There were 2 criminals in there, and one guy who was doing it on purpose. The criminals were Larry Summers and Robert Rubin. Both of them wanted to take control of the entire global monetary system. Alan Greenspan wanted the derivatives out there to give the banks enough rope to hang themselves so that they would destroy the entire system. And that is exactly what was done. The system is on the brink of destruction. All it takes is a little hiccup in derivatives. I've been looking at Deutsche Bank, but there's another one. And this one is just as big, if not bigger. Let me show you. Great article from this guy, Pepe Escobar. Iran goes for maximum counter pressure. Sooner or later, the U.S. maximum pressure on Iran will inevitably be met by maximum counter pressure. Sparks are ominously bound to fly. For the past few days, intelligence circles across Eurasia have been prodding Tehran to consider a quite straightforward scenario. There would be no need to shut down the Strait of Hormuz if Quds Force Commander General Qasem Soleimani, the ultimate Pentagon benetoire, explained in detail on the global media that Washington simply does not have the military capacity to keep the strait open. As I previously reported, shutting down the Strait of Hormuz would destroy the American economy by detonating a $1.2 quadrillion derivative market that would collapse the world banking system, crushing the world's 80 trillion GDP and causing an unprecedented depression. Soleimani should also state bluntly that Iran may in fact shut down the Strait of Hormuz if the nation is prevented from exporting essential 2 million barrels of oil a day, mostly to Asia. Exports, which before illegal U.S. sanctions and de facto blockade would normally reach 2.5 million barrels per day, now may be down to only 400,000 barrels. Soleimani's intervention would align with consistent signs already coming from the IRGC. Persian Gulf is being described as an imminent shooting gallery. Brigadier General Hossein Salami stressed that Iran's ballistic missiles are capable of hitting carriers in the sea with pinpoint precision. The whole northern border of the Persian Gulf on Iranian territory is lined up with anti-ship missiles, as I confirmed with IRGC sources. Then it happened. Chairman of the Chiefs of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Major General Bakiri, went straight to the point, quote, "If the Islamic Republic of Iran were determined to prevent export of oil from the Persian Gulf, that determination would be realized in full and announced in public in view of the power of the country and its armed forces. The facts are stark. Tehran simply won't accept all-out economic war lying down. Prevented to export the oil that protects its economic survival, the Strait of Hormuz question has been officially addressed. Now it's time for the derivatives." Presenting detailed derivatives analysis plus military analysis to global media would force the media pack, mostly Western, to go to Warren Buffett to see if it is true. And it is true. Soleimani, according to this scenario, should say as much and recommended that the media go talk to Warren Buffett. The extent of a possible derivative crisis is a uber tattoo theme for Washington consensus institutions. According to one of my American banking sources, the most accurate figure, $1.2 quadrillion, comes from a Swiss banker off the record. He should know the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, is in Basel. The key point is that it doesn't matter how the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. It could be a false flag, or it could be because the Iranian government feels it's going to be attacked and then sinks a cargo ship or two. What matters is the final result. Any blocking of energy flow will lead to a price of oil to reach $200 a barrel, $500, or even, according to some Goldman Sachs projections, $1,000 a barrel. Another U.S. banking source explains, the key in the analysis is what is called notional. They are so far out of the money that they are said to be nothing. But in a crisis, the notional can become real. For example, if I buy a car for 1 million barrels of oil at $300 a barrel, my cost will not be very great, as it is thought to be inconceivable that the price would go so high. Sorry, not a car, a call by a call for 1 million barrels of oil. That is notional. But if the strait is closed, that becomes a stupendous figure. BIS will only commit officially to indicate the total notional amount outstanding for contracts and derivative makers is an estimated 542 trillion. How many trillions do you really need? But it is just an estimate. The banking source adds, even here, it is the notional that has meaning. Huge amounts of interest rate derivatives. Most are notional, but if oil goes to 1,000 a barrel, then this will affect interest rates if 45% of the world's GDP is oil. This is what is called in business a contingent liability. Goldman Sachs has projected a feasible possible $1,000 a barrel a few weeks after the Strait of Hormuz is shut down. This figure times 100 million barrels of oil produces per day leads to 45% of the $80 trillion global GDP. It is self-evident that the world economy would collapse based on that being done alone. So here's the summary. There are trillions of dollars in derivatives against all kinds of assets, especially the largest commodity bought and sold in the world, which is oil. Yes, it is a bigger market than gold, than silver, than anything. Oil was the linchpin of the petrodollar. It is controlled and rigged through derivatives. If they lose control of those derivatives, one, if not five, all five of the biggest derivative holders would go down. Either by not being able to collect on a hedge, because it's all about counterparties. Who is the counterparty to all these derivative trades? And Deutsche Bank wrote a lot of them, JP Morgan. The thing about derivatives, when you write a derivative, it's kind of like an insurance policy. You get the money up front, and then you hope it doesn't go bad, or you hope a large portion doesn't go bad. So yes, the US will not go to war with Iran. It would destroy the global monetary system. At some point, Iran can just pull the plug themselves and say, okay, no more traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. We've got hidden anti-ship missiles all up and down the strait. Boom, 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 bing, bang, bong. Within 24 hours, the derivatives go sideways. Jerome Powell calls a national emergency, and all markets are shut down, never to open again. It's a big deal. So yes, it could be Deutsche Bank goes down to set off the derivative bomb. It could be a war with Iran that happens to set off the derivative bomb. That's how weak our system is. All right, let's move on. I want to show you guys, since most of you, at least this is going out to private road members only in the beginning. Later dates, I'll be sending this out to everybody. But right now, private road only, you guys have access to everything. Even the people who are not on the private road, if you're on the public road, you have access to the left side here. Go to the resources tab, click on that, all kinds of documentation of where I get these crazy theories. Like, you want to see the gold in the Grand Canyon article? Just click on it. Oh, they removed that one. That's right. I have a backup at the Road to Roota. There it is. Televast reaches 1912. You can read about the billions and billions of ounces in the canyons of the Grand Canyon, in the banks. But here's what I want you to go to. If you go down to, well, you might not be doing this because you're on YouTube, but there are the Road to Roota documents. Right here, Wishes and Rainbows comic book, the original, 1981, the redone one, January of 2007, that's when I found it. And all kinds of, the teacher's guide is here, all kinds of good stuff. But let's go to, this is the original Road to Roota comic. And I want to show you something that is extremely important. In the comic, on page 11. No, wait, page 10. Page 9. Yeah. Page 10, the mayor instructs Roota, which is Alan Greenspan, and this guy, Went Lowbeck? I forgot his name. Rocky and Roota to go find more gold, basically, other than the gold in the Grand Canyon. And they find it, but they can't reach it. And what they end up doing is using oil to create the petrodollar. That's what the black tears are in the Road to Ruta comic book. And there's Arthur Burns telling Greenspan, the flower's colors cannot live without the golden sunlight of the world above, but it is said that its tears will grow new flowers if you receive the light. So they plant the black tears, and voila, you got new flowers. This is all about the creation of the petrodollar in the early 1970s by Greenspan and Kissinger. Basically, the idea was they will recycle funds, they get OPEC to and the Saudis to only sell oil in US dollars. And remember, oil is the number one commodity bought and sold around the world. If they only sold in US dollars, that means every country on planet Earth that wanted to buy oil would have to keep US dollars in reserve, creating an artificial demand for US dollars. All this is represented in this comic. But the key is, after everybody wants some colored flowers, Arthur Burns says to Greenspan, go figure out how to allocate the flowers to people. And Greenspan goes and writes this in the sand. This is an economic formula called On the Road to the Golden Age. On the Road to the Golden Age is it wasn't Nobel Prize winning. I keep saying that because it was better than Nobel Prize winning. The concept was, if you want to go back to a gold standard, print as much money as possible, build up your roads, bridges, everything, print money to infinity before you go back. That's what they're doing right now. With all the printing behind the scenes, listen to Catherine Austin Fitz's 21 trillion. It's a lot more than that. They print infinity amounts of money, and that was always the plan, and that's what Roota wrote in the sand. So the guy, E. Phelps, I think it was, he didn't win a Nobel Prize for this, but he got put on the Nobel Prize board. Even bigger. I don't even know if he's still alive, but it was a big deal. And when the new comic came out, now look what Roota wrote in the sand right there. That's the economic formula for On the Road to the Golden Age. Look what she writes in the 2000 comic. 11 plus 9. Islamic crescent moon. This is from the Federal Reserve System. This is not me making this stuff up. You're seeing it right there with your own eyes. 11 plus 9, 9/11. Remember, this is January of 2008 that this was, or 2007 that this was put out originally. And I'm like, oh my God, 9/11. I thought it was related to 9/11-2001. That because the bankers were, screwing, obviously it was a false flag. Because the bankers had done what they did, they're going to end the game. I was wrong. It wasn't 9/11-2001. It was 9/11-2008, a year and a half after. At 11 o'clock a.m. is when they clicked the mouse to destroy the system, like Paul Kanjorski said at the beginning of this video. So the Fed told us in January of 2007 they were going to destroy the system on 9/11 at 11 in the morning, which is what they did a year and a half later. Crazy? Absolutely. Is there more clues? Absolutely. It sends just chills down my spine when I found this stuff. And then the Islamic crescent moon right here. Someone said, no, that's not really an 11. Well, what do you mean that's not really 11? They whited out the inside. That's definitely a plus, and that's a 9, although they only put a little dot in there, right? Dot after. And then my buddy goes, oh my God, look what's in the flower. A crescent moon for the Islamic, remember the Islamic terrorists that took down 9/11? That is 11 plus 9. That is 9/11. And then we had confirmation on 9/11-2008 at 11 in the morning, which gets us to where we're going. And part 2 of this video is going to discuss certain things that I found out, certain things that link up. I'm going to talk RV. I'm going to talk Michelle White Dove. She gave me information on this as well. So that's the end of this video. I will be coming out shortly with part 2 for private road members. And A really good video to watch if you don't understand the gold stuff is a video I just posted on Patreon and on the Road to Roota. It's been on the Road to Roota. It's called Golden Oldies to the Crypto Future. Just go to the Road to Roota portion of the private road and you will see this video. That's it for part 1. Get ready for part 2 as to when the next time is going to come. This is Bix. I'll talk to you in a bit.